What's up, guys? Dabruski here. Today we have something a little bit different, but I think it's kind of following along the same lines of kind of where I want this whole channel to go. I'm going to show you how to replace a valve cover. I know it's not anything crazy, it's not a head gasket, it's not a whole engine rebuild, but for a lot of you, your cars are leaking oil and you're thinking, where's this oil coming from? So you look at your engine and you see on the top, there's a little bit of dribble, there's a little bit of oil coming down. Very high chance it's your valve cover. So today, we're going to show you how to change it on the Civic. The valve cover is something that anyone can do, whether you're just starting with cars or you've been working on cars forever. It's essentially a gasket that sits in between a valve cover that sits on top of your valve train and your head, your cylinder head. It's a thin piece of rubber or silicone, or some people even have cork on older motors, and essentially, or engine, sorry. Essentially what it is once you pull your valve cover off, that gasket kind of goes around the whole edge, and then you got some seals for where the bolts go, and then you torque it down to spec and it keeps that oil from coming through. A lot of the times they dry out, they crack, they go bad. I mean, it's just how it is. Rubber is not always gonna be soft, and especially if it gets heated, cooled, repeatedly over and over, it's gonna become brittle, crack, it's gonna become hard, it's just not gonna be a good seal anymore. So I'm gonna be doing it to the B20, the one that's in the blue race car, obviously. I ended up ordering this from, I ordered it from a website, I don't know, I can't remember. I didn't want to go to like O'Reilly's or AutoZone. I just figured I didn't really need it back then. I just bought it online. It was cheaper and ships to my door. I didn't have to go anywhere. It came in a bag like this, which I thought was kind of weird. I've never seen it like this. Usually come in like a box. We got the valve cover. We got, these are the O-rings that go for where the spark plug goes. And then we have these seals. These are just like a piece of metal on one side and then rubber on the other side. Those are where the bolts go that hold the valve cover down. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all those off, and I think Hondas are, well, any kind of four-cylinder that's inline, it's going to be relatively the easiest unless you're working like an older V8. I know I did some valve cover gaskets on like a 5.4 Triton V8 off of a Ford. That was kind of a hassle, and then I did them on like my Chevy pickup, my old Avalanche. That was a hassle, and then we had to do them on a Ford 500. The intake manifold had to come off for that. That was just insane, but for the Honda, we're a lot more fortunate since it's just right on top. I don't really have to pull off anything. Pull off 4 spark plug wires, unbolt, what, 1, 2, 3, like 6 or 7 bolts, and then just clean it up, swap it out. So that's what we're gonna do now. Alright, so now that I'm next to the engine, what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna kind of get everything out of the way. On this one, it's just 4 spark plug wires and 1 PCV valve, which is a pressure control valve that's also in the, it sits in the valve cover. I'll see if I can get a little bit of that right now. Let's see if I can focus on it. So we have the spark plug wires right here that we're going to pull off. We're going to pull off this PCV valve right here, and we're going to just get those out of the way. And then we have, I'll just count this out really quick. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total bolts that come off. Or I guess these ones are going to be nuts since they do sit on top. And once you pull those off, the valve cover is just going to lift up, and then there's going to be some oil dripping, so make sure you have a rag, like especially if you have your exhaust manifold here, just throw a rag or a towel or something right there to catch that excess oil. And then once you pull it out of the way, just kind of put it on some cardboard or something while you swap out the gasket. And another thing, just really quick, is when you are replacing this valve cover gasket, don't do it when the engine's hot. I mean, because you're just going to burn yourself up. Just let the engine cool down and then just swap it out. So I just got the valve cover off, and right now is a perfect time to inspect your camshafts and inspect kind of everything in there just to see what kind of, you know, if there's any scoring or if there's any damages. I'm kind of looking over these cams right now, and I mean, they look brand new. They look literally brand spanking new. One thing that does bother me a lot, and the reason I'm assuming this is why it's actually leaking, is where there's those cam journals where it kind of goes up and around like that over the actual camshaft where it holds it. Somebody put like a bunch of like either like a Honda Bond or like an RTV or something, and what that happens is when you put the RTV there, it kind of creates a semi-secure seal, but when you put a rubber gasket in there and the rubber expands and contracts, it kind of like gets to the point where it gets almost more brittle, and that's where the oil leak is going to start. There's so much on this. I'm going to see if I can get a little bit of it right now, and I will show you exactly what I mean. So as you can see what I'm talking about, kind of right here where you can see that like RTV sealant. Oh, the camera doesn't want to focus on that, I'm sorry. It doesn't, that stuff doesn't help. Like, people don't realize that. They just put a whole boatload of that on, and it makes it just leak even more. But yeah, like I was saying, I'll just show you these cams. You can see there's no scoring on them at all. They are in like mint condition. This engine's actually super healthy. I know it is a low mile engine, so I'm pretty happy on that. And the timing belt, just by looking at it, you can't really tell much, but the timing belt actually looks pretty new. I do have a new timing belt kit for it, but I'll probably do that, you know, in the next 5,000 miles or so. Alright, so I got the whole surface cleaned off, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of this, this is like a German version, but there's a lot of different ones you can buy. It's an original sealant. This is what I used to use on my Subarus, like on the WRX oil pans and stuff. I'm just going to put a tiny dab on each corner where there was a lot of the other silicone stuff, but I'm going to put a tiny dab just to seal it just barely. And I'm going to put it on the inside, so when it does dry, it's on the inside of the valve cover and not on the outside, so the oil can't get out at all. So if it does hit that corner, it'll just stay on the inside. So we're going to put a tiny dab there. Okay, so I just finished it up. I just torqued down all the bolts down to, I think I torqued them to 8 pounds, 7.5, 8 pounds, somewhere in there, 8 foot-pounds. I did put a new valve cover on it as well. The nice thing about Honda is, like I said, you can get parts anywhere for them. I got this one, the paint was all messed up on it, so I sanded it down and painted it like this metallic paint, and then just scuffed off this Honda Motor Company sign. I wish I could get this more on the camera, like how good this paint looks on this. But it turned out pretty good. So hopefully that valve cover is going to seal and not going to have to worry about anything like that anymore. No leaks. Like I said, the valve cover, it's one of those jobs that I feel like anyone can do if it's accessible enough. So if you're, you know, really new to cars and you have a 4-cylinder, if it's your first car, if you even have a Honda and you're just like, oh, I do have an oil leak, it's a really good place to start and look. And if it is, that's awesome, because it's such an easy fix and it's so cheap. I think the gasket's like 25 bucks or 30 bucks. It's not bad at all. It turned out good, and just painting your valve cover, that makes the world of a difference.